Before we begin, subscribe, like, and drop a comment if you're ready for the kind of crime story that keeps you checking your locks at night. Now let's dive in. The night Milan police would later call the rupture began with a scream that never should have been heard. At exactly 2:14 a.m., emergency dispatchers received a frantic call from a passerby near Via Carlo Porta, a narrow, elegant street only a few blocks from the historic Brera district. A woman's voice had echoed out of an abandoned courtyard, then abruptly stopped. By the time officers arrived, the street was silent. Too silent. The courtyard, a fenced-off square behind an old textile factory, looked almost staged for a crime scene: cracked stones, a dangling construction tarp fluttering like skin, and a single shoe lying in the center. No blood. No victim. No signs of a struggle except for the shoe, a pale beige flat with a broken strap. But the eerie detail that unsettled every officer present wasn't the shoe. It was the message carved into the dusty concrete wall, a message written in a hurry but with deliberate force. She shouldn't have looked. Detective Elisa Moretti, one of the most meticulous investigators in the Milan Polizia di Stato, arrived moments later. She stared at the message, jaw tense, feeling the unmistakable weight of a case that wouldn't let her sleep for months. Moretti didn't believe in coincidences, and she certainly didn't believe in random crimes. This was the second disappearance in the same district in 9 days. Both victims female, both last seen walking home late, both vanishing without leaving so much as a trace of direction. The media had already begun whispering about a serial predator. The department refused to use the term. At least not yet. But Moretti could sense it: this was no ordinary offender. Whoever they were organized, calculating, and bold enough to operate in the heart of Italy's most fashionable metropolitan center. An officer approached her, holding a plastic evidence pouch. Inside was a small black rectangle. "A phone?" Elisa asked. "Locked," the officer replied. "Found near the gate." Moretti slipped on gloves and studied the item. It wasn't a phone. It was a miniature encrypted USB recorder, the kind journalists and intelligence agents use to capture conversations without detection. Sleek, expensive, and modified. That made the missing woman instantly more interesting. "Run, Prince," she ordered. But internally, she already knew, whoever this woman was, she was involved in something dangerous enough to make a predator carve warnings into concrete. By 3 a.m., investigators identified the owner of the shoe and the recorder, Isabella Rinaldi, a 29-year-old financial analyst with a crisp professional record and no known enemies. She lived 8 blocks away and had left her office around midnight after sending a final email to her manager. But there was something off about her last movements. Street cameras showed Isabella walking quickly, almost as if being followed. Her posture tight. Her head turning every few steps. And just as she passed the textile factory, the footage glitched, only 2 seconds of static, before resuming to show an empty sidewalk. 2 seconds missing. 2 seconds in which Isabella disappeared. The department pulled technical specialists who confirmed the truth: the glitch wasn't accidental. Someone had intentionally jammed the street camera for a brief burst, just long enough to grab a person without being seen. Elisa felt her pulse spike. This wasn't a street offender. This was someone with equipment, planning, and insider knowledge. Someone who could manipulate surveillance. Someone careful. Someone who had done this before. Later that morning, Moretti and her partner, Inspector Luca Ferraro, visited Isabella's apartment. Inside, everything was immaculate: perfectly arranged bookshelves, a spotless kitchen, an open laptop still glowing on the desk. But the laptop screen displayed a document Elisa couldn't ignore. A chart filled with names, dates, offshore accounts, and a heading highlighted in red. Project Intercept, Internal Irregularities. Elisa felt a chill crawl over her skin. This wasn't the work of an ordinary analyst. Isabella had been investigating financial misconduct, something large enough that she felt the need to document it privately. And not on her office system, but on her personal device. Intercept, that sounds corporate, Luca murmured, scanning the file. But why would she keep this at home? Because she didn't trust anyone, Elisa replied. A knock at the door startled them both. The building's concierge, an older man with tired eyes, entered nervously. "Detective? I didn't tell the officers earlier because I wasn't sure," he said, voice trembling slightly. "But yesterday afternoon, a man came asking for Isabella. He wasn't a friend. I could tell." "Describe him," Elisa said quickly. He spoke Italian, but with an accent. Tall, wearing a gray coat. He kept asking what time she usually came home. And when I asked who he was, he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. The concierge hesitated, swallowing. He slipped me a card and said, "Tell her I came by." But when I looked down, it wasn't a business card. It was blank. Elisa and Luca exchanged a look. Professional. Controlled. Anonymous. Someone was hunting Isabella. Back at headquarters, the USB recorder was finally cracked open. What investigators found inside was not a confession or a conversation, but a single audio file only 10 seconds long. 10 seconds of breathing. Heavy. Close. Controlled. Then a voice whispered. She saw the route. She wasn't supposed to see the route. The file cut off. The room fell into stunned silence. Luca turned to Elisa, his expression tight. Route? What route? But Moretti wasn't listening. She had replayed the whisper a dozen times in her head already. The voice was distorted, but not fully masked. Mail. Calm. Almost rehearsed. Whoever recorded that message wasn't panicking. He was documenting. Almost signaling. The investigation spiraled quickly. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, forensic techs analyzed every millimeter of the courtyard, and cyber teams dug through Isabella's financial files for any thread that might reveal her last discovery. And then, late that afternoon, everything shifted. A patrol officer radioed in from Isabella's bank. He had found something. In the bank's underground loading area, hidden behind a stack of paper archives, a small door had been forced open. A maintenance closet. At first glance, it appeared empty. But on the floor was a narrow vent grate, unscrewed, and a piece of torn fabric that matched the color of Isabella's coat. Elisa's heart thumped. She dropped to her knees, lifted the vent cover, and looked into a dark shaft extending deep beneath the bank building. At the bottom was a ladder. And beside it, fresh footprints in the dust. Small. Feminine. And next to them, a second set. Larger. Heavier. Leading downward into the darkness. Elisa felt the breath leave her chest. Someone had dragged Isabella underground. Someone who knew the layout of the bank's restricted maintenance tunnels. Someone who wasn't finished. As she stared down into the black corridor, her phone buzzed. It was the tech division. Detective, you need to see this. We just found another encrypted folder in Isabella's laptop. It was hidden under a ghost partition. Show me, Elisa said, not looking away from the tunnel. There was a pause, a clicking of keys, then the tech whispered. Elisa, the file is named after you. Detective Moretti froze. And the tech continued. It's called Moretti_Intercept_2. Elisa slowly exhaled, gripping the edge of the vent. If Isabella had a file with her name on it, then this wasn't just a disappearance. It was a setup. A message. And she was already part of it. But when the specialized search team descended into the bank tunnel and opened the next locked chamber, what they found changed everything. Chapter 2, the Milan Shadow Intercept. The first thing the search team noticed when they pried open the locked metal chamber deep under the bank was the temperature. It wasn't cold like the rest of the tunnels. It was warm. Humid. As if machines had been running there only minutes before. Detective Elisa Moretti stepped in slowly, her flashlight trembling just slightly in her grip. Luca followed close behind, one hand hovering near his sidearm even though they both knew bullets were useless if they didn't know who, or what, they were dealing with. Then the beam of Elisa's flashlight froze on the wall. Rows of monitors. At least 12 of them. All powered on, all quietly flickering with feeds from street cameras across Milan, Piazza Duomo, Garibaldi Station, Navigli District, even the side street near Isabella's apartment. Someone had been watching the entire city from this hidden underground room. But what made Elisa's blood run cold wasn't the surveillance setup, it was the live feed in the center screen. Isabella Rinaldi. Bound to a metal chair. Blindfolded. Alive. Her chest rising and falling rapidly. She's breathing, Luca whispered, as if afraid the screens could hear him. Elisa stepped closer. The timestamp showed the footage was live, merely seconds old. The room Isabella was in appeared industrial, with concrete pillars and a visible drainage pipe behind her. But no faces. No voices. No clues. Then a sharp beeping noise made everyone turn. One of the other screens flickered and switched to a black background with a single line of red text. You're late. The room tightened with tension. Another line appeared beneath it. The intercept doesn't stop here. Elisa felt her throat constrict. She stepped closer, almost touching the screen. Who are you? She whispered. As if responding, the text changed again. You already know. Luca swore under his breath. They're watching us through some feed. We're being played. Elisa stared at the words, and suddenly, she did know. A sickening recognition hit her, not of a person, but of a pattern. Whoever orchestrated this had planned every movement, every discovery. This wasn't about Isabella. This was about the information she uncovered, Project Intercept. The surveillance feeds. The encrypted recorder. The jammed cameras. This was an intelligence operation masquerading as a kidnapping. And someone inside the system was orchestrating it. The search team swept the underground chamber while Elisa examined the equipment. Everything was clean, no fingerprints, no discarded items, no trace of DNA. Whoever operated here was surgical. Then Luca's voice called from the back corner. "Elisa, you need to see this." She hurried over. On the floor, half hidden behind a storage unit, was a small black notebook, leather-bound, unmarked. Luca handed her gloves, and she picked it up, heart pounding. Inside were pages of numbers, symbols, and hand-drawn maps. But the first page carried a name written in clean, deliberate handwriting. Moretti. Her breath caught. The second line read, "Stage 2 begins now." A fresh chill sliced through her spine. Stage 2? That implied Stage 1 had already happened. The disappearances. The surveillance. Isabella. And now, her. "Elisa," Luca said quietly, "this is personal. Whoever this is, they plan for you to be here." She closed the notebook. "Which means they're watching what we do next." Before she could finish, the monitors all shut off at once. The room plunged into near darkness. Only one screen flickered back to life. It was the feed of Isabella. Only now, someone was standing behind her. A man. Face blurred. Voice distorted as he leaned close to the camera. "Detective Moretti, if you want to understand why she disappeared, you must find what she found." The figure tilted his head, as if amused. "But be careful. Looking too closely ruined her life. And yours won't be any different." The screen went black again. And then, without warning, a loud metallic bang echoed through the chamber. The team spun toward the tunnel entrance. The door had slammed shut. Someone had locked them inside. A panic ripple moved through the group, but Elisa stayed steady. "Find another exit. Now." One of the officers shined a light around the perimeter until he found a narrow side corridor. They moved quickly, emerging into a disused furnace room, the air thick with dust. As they climbed back toward street level, Elisa called headquarters. But before she could speak, Luca grabbed her arm. "Elisa, look." Her phone screen lit up with a new message notification. Unknown number. No text. Only a video attachment. With trembling fingers, she opened it. The clip showed Isabella, tied in the same room as before, but this time she was conscious. She struggled, gasping, shaking her head desperately. And then, a distorted voice off camera. "Tell her." Isabella lifted her head, shaking violently, tears streaking her cheeks. "Elisa, you don't understand. I didn't mean to involve you," she cried. "But they said your name. They said you were next." The video ended abruptly. Every muscle in Elisa's body tightened. Whoever held Isabella wanted Elisa directly involved. They were pushing her into the center of a puzzle that looked more like a trap with each passing hour. Back at headquarters, tech teams ripped apart the underground footage frame by frame. Forensics matched the notebook paper to a high-end Swiss manufacturer, rare, expensive. One used by only a handful of European intelligence factions. But while everyone searched for international connections, Elisa fixated on something else. The word route. The whisper on the recorder. She saw the route. Isabella had uncovered something about Project Intercept, something worth killing for. Elisa dug through Isabella's files again, this time deeper, combing through corrupt segments and hidden caches. Hours passed until she found it, a hidden folder buried inside the financial charts. A set of coordinates. Dozens of them. Spread across Milan. Labeled. Route_log_1, Thursday. Route_log_2, Friday. Route_log_3, Monday. And then. Intercept_point, active. The realization hit Elisa like a punch. These weren't financial routes. They were transport routes. Movement logs. For what? She zoomed in on the final set of coordinates. Her stomach twisted. They pointed to a warehouse complex near the Milan cargo rail line, a place with no surveillance cameras, no foot traffic, and plenty of room to hide a hostage. She stood abruptly. "Luca, gear up. We're going. Now." But before they could leave, another officer rushed in, pale and shaking. "Detective, we got a hit on the blurred face from the video. There's only one partial match." Elisa braced herself. The officer looked like he wished he didn't have to say it. "It's someone from inside our own department." Silence. Heavy. Devastating. Someone in law enforcement was involved. Someone close. Elisa felt the room tilt, not from fear, but from clarity. This wasn't a kidnapping. This was an operation. A purge. A cover-up. And she was stepping straight into the crosshairs. Still, she grabbed her jacket. "Let's move. Isabella's running out of time." Luca hesitated. "Elisa, what if the warehouse is another trap?" Elisa tightened her grip on the notebook. "Then it's the only trap we've got to walk into." Outside, sirens wailed as the convoy pulled out. But as they sped toward the warehouse, Elisa's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time, just 6 words. You shouldn't have found the route. And beneath it, a photo. A grainy shot taken just seconds earlier? Of Elisa. Inside her own car. From only a few meters away. Somebody was watching her. Somebody close. And as the warehouse came into view, Elisa realized the truth. Whatever waited inside wasn't just the next step of the case. It was the beginning of the end. And when she pushed open the warehouse door, what she saw inside would shatter everything she thought she knew. You said? Chapter 3. ChatGPT said. Here is Chapter 3, 1,000 words, cinematic, intense, and closing the story with a twist. Chapter 3, The Milan Shadow Intercept. The warehouse sat like a silent monolith against the dark Milan skyline, its metal walls reflecting the convoy's flashing blue lights. The wind scraped against the structure with a hollow whistle, almost as if the building itself were warning them to leave. Detective Elisa Moretti tightened her grip on her flashlight and stepped out of the car. The photo she'd just received, a picture of herself taken from frightening proximity, burned in the back of her mind. Someone close was watching. Someone inside the operation. But Isabella was alive. And she was somewhere inside this warehouse. Elisa and Luca approached the main entrance, a dented steel door with fresh scrape marks around the lock. Someone had forced it open recently. Someone who wanted it found. The moment Elisa pushed the door, the smell hit her first, damp concrete, metal, and the faint tang of industrial chemical residue. The space was vast, pitch black except for thin strips of moonlight sneaking through the roof. Her flashlight cut a narrow path across the floor. Clear left, Luca whispered. Right, she answered. Their footsteps echoed. Too loudly. As they reached the center of the warehouse, Elisa stopped. A single chair sat under a hanging bulb. Empty. But taped to the chair's backrest was a folded piece of paper. Elisa slowly peeled it off and opened it. A single sentence stared back at her in the same sharp handwriting from the underground notebook. Stage 3 begins with truth. A click echoed behind them. Elisa spun, weapon raised. A shadow emerged from the darkness, slowly stepping into the thin cone of light. It was a man in uniform. One of their own. Deputy Chief Marco Bellini. Elisa froze. She had known Bellini for years, a disciplined, respected, almost father-like figure inside the department. A man who trained half of Milan's detectives. He raised his hands, palms open. Don't shoot, he said calmly. I'm the one who called you here. Every instinct screamed at Elisa to pull the trigger. But something was wrong. Bellini's face wasn't afraid. It wasn't hostile. It was hollowed. Haunted. Where is Isabella? Elisa demanded. Bellini swallowed. She's safe. That's not an answer. Luca moved to flank him, but Bellini didn't react. His eyes stayed on Elisa. You weren't supposed to be part of this, he said quietly. We tried to keep you out. Elisa kept her aim steady. Out of what? Bellini inhaled sharply. Project Intercept. The words dropped like a stone. That operation was classified, Luca snapped. Shut down years ago. No, Bellini whispered. It never shut down. It simply went dark. Elisa felt the air thicken. Intercept was never a financial program, he continued. It was surveillance. Off the record. Off the books. Designed to track organized networks that move through Milan's financial institutions. You're saying this whole thing, Isabella, the disappearances, is connected to an intelligence operation? Elisa asked. Bellini nodded. But not how you think. He stepped closer. Elisa. Isabella didn't discover Intercept. She was working for it. The room fell deadly silent. Elisa shook her head slowly. No. She was an analyst. She was more than that, Bellini interrupted softly. She reported directly to a shadow unit under the ministry. Her job was to identify irregular financial routes tied to criminal syndicates. But when she found the wrong route, she panicked. She came to me. Elisa's heartbeat hammered. The route, she murmured. She saw something she wasn't meant to. Bellini nodded. She uncovered movement logs for a covert transport network, a network used not by criminals, but by the agency itself. Luca's breath hitched. You're telling us Intercept was running black transfers? Elisa felt her stomach twist. What were they transporting, she asked. Bellini hesitated. Elisa, people. Her blood ran ice cold. Intercept tracked criminals. But someone inside realized they could use the same system to move them. Off record. No trials. No questions. Gone. You're lying, Luca said, voice shaking. I wish I were, Bellini replied. Elisa's mind raced. Where is Isabella now, she demanded. Bellini looked at the ground. She came to me 2 weeks ago, he said. She told me she had proof. Names. Dates. Routes. She begged me to help her expose it. So you hid her? Luca asked. I tried, Bellini whispered. But they found her first. Elisa's throat tightened. Who? Who is they? Bellini looked up, eyes filled with something between regret and terror. The same people who sent you that picture. The same people who set this trap. Someone inside Intercept. Someone with authority. He stepped forward slowly, lowering his voice. I thought I could protect her by staging the disappearance. But I underestimated them. They took her. And now, they want to frame you. Elisa's breath caught. What? That's what stage 3 is, he said. Erasing the investigator who got too close. A sudden metallic clatter echoed from the back of the warehouse. Elisa snapped toward the sound. A second figure stepped into the light. Isabella. Alive. Barely. Her wrists were bruised, her face pale, but her eyes, they locked onto Elisa with desperate relief. Elisa, she cried. They're still here. Before anyone could react, the lights exploded on with a violent boom. And standing along the warehouse catwalks above them were 6 armed men, faces masked, uniforms unmarked. Luca drew his weapon. Bellini didn't move. Isabella screamed. Then a voice echoed from the loudspeakers, deep, calm, unmistakably familiar. Elisa Moretti. You were warned not to look. Elisa's stomach dropped. She knew that voice. It belonged to Commissioner Renato Vasari, the man who oversaw half of Milan's covert operations. Her superior. Her mentor. And the last person she ever suspected. You should have ignored the route, Vasari continued. You should have walked away. But you didn't. His tone sharpened. And now? Intercept must be preserved. 5 of the masked men aimed their weapons downward. Bellini stepped in front of Elisa and Luca. Run, he whispered. Now. The first shot rang out. Bellini collapsed instantly. Isabella screamed again. Elisa, go! Luca grabbed Elisa's arm. They sprinted toward the side exit as bullets tore through the metal walls. Isabella staggered behind them, but she was hit, a sharp cry as she went down. Elisa turned back, eyes wide. Isabella! Isabella pressed a hand to her side, blood seeping through her fingers. Take the notebook, she gasped, pushing a small object toward Elisa. It's all there, everything. Luca dragged Elisa away as more gunfire erupted. They crashed through the exit into the night. But as they reached the safety of the convoy, Elisa turned just in time to see the warehouse engulfed in flames. A controlled detonation. Vasari's voice echoed over the speakers one last time, calm, composed, final. Intercept does not fail. The warehouse roof caved in. The fire consumed everything. When the blaze finally burned out, investigators found no bodies. Not Isabella's. Not Bellini's. Not any masked operatives. They had vanished. All of them. And in the days that followed, Elisa learned the truth. Project Intercept had already been erased from official records. Files wiped. Footage corrupted. Witnesses reassigned or silenced. The only thing left was the notebook in her possession. The only real evidence. The only thing they hadn't expected her to escape with. She opened it again. On the last page, written in different ink, shaky, rushed, were words that froze her blood. Elisa, if you're reading this, I'm not dead. And neither is he. They're coming for you. Find the final route. It was signed. Isabella Rinaldi. Elisa stared out across the burning city lights. Intercept wasn't over. It had just gone deeper. And somewhere in Milan, Commissioner Vasari was still watching. Still moving. Still hunting. She closed the notebook, heart steadying with cold determination. The war had started. And she wasn't running. If you think this story was intense, she whispered to herself, you're not ready for the next one.